You're listening to The Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with Lyndia Grant.
Well, good evening, Radio 1 listeners. Good to have you here with us this afternoon. You're listening to The Lyndia Grant Show, Spirit 1340 WYCB. I'd like to remind you all that it is the oldest gospel radio station and the first contemporary gospel outlet in the United States. Today is Friday, March 4th, and we're happy you've joined us. We're going to have, again, our own Dr. Julianne Malvo with us today. She's been out sick. Is she here yet, Dr. Julianne? We're going to have Dr. Julianne Malvo. Let me just tell you who. Oh, good. Wonderful. Wonderful. But I'm going to let everybody know who my other guests are. We also have the committee, one of the committees that's helping to get the Lamont Riggs Library renamed. And I think our technician is calling and getting them all on. So I'm just going to go ahead and start talking to you, Dr. Julianne. How are you today, Dr. Julianne? Tell us what's been going on. Dr. Julianne Malvo.
My sister, yes, you know what's going on? It's crazy, crazy, crazy. Ukraine should be at the top of our list because still a disproportionate number of enlisted soldiers are black and brown. Too many black and brown men join the military because they can get scholarships and do other things. And when you see that, okay, are you going to throw yourself up under a bus? Yeah, so we have some challenges. Mm-hmm. And President Biden, I think, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll probably give him a 7, maybe an 8 on Ukraine.
Which is great. It's excellent. Mm-hmm.
Coming from me, you know it is.
It is.
But I think he's handling it well. But I think there's still so many challenges around how we manage this in terms of our people. In other words, if you're my brother, your cousin, our son, willing to die for Ukraine. And that's the comparison that has not been made. And if you can't make a compelling case, here's what we have. We have World War III.
Yes,
and
right.
that's what we're all afraid of. And we're seeing gas prices rising at 10%, not 10%, 10 cents a day. So started out Monday at $3, by Friday it's $3.50.
Oh my God! And I need to fill up, and I was waiting until Saturday. I should have gone ahead,
You should have, honey. You sure should have. You sure should have.
Somebody texted me and told me, and I just did not do it. Oh my goodness! Go ahead, Dr. Julianne.
Oh no! So it's the inflation issue is an issue that hits black people and black women harder than anybody else. And this whole thing with gasoline, you have people who are commuting. I mean, I have colleagues here in Los Angeles. Their kids go over here, they go over there. They're spending 100 miles a day, and that's nothing in LA, in the LA area. But that means they're spending how many dollars?
A lot of money.
So that's first. Let's start with Ukraine. Let's trickle it down to gasoline prices. Let's double it down after the gasoline price issue to we're seeing good employment reports. But those good reports don't mean very much to people who are being pressed. So what you see is a sense of people being pressed. And then, of course, the State of the Union was okay. Maybe your listeners have a different opinion, and I will welcome hearing from them. All y'all know you can reach me if you want to reach me at Julianne Malvo at AOL. And I know I'm old school, but that's just who I am. I'm old school. So Julianne Malvo at AOL, and somebody got to say something. But the point is, in terms of what's going on, is that I thought the State of the Union, again, it was B minus, C plus. He didn't knock nothing out of the park. In fact, I'm concerned that President Biden is not responding to the people who brought him to the dance. Mm-hmm. At the same time, we're all so excited about Kelandria Brown. How excited can we be? Black woman, even if she doesn't make it, but she has to make it. First Black woman nominee to the Supreme Court. But I also want President Biden said, confirm the Fed. No, what he should have said, and I would have hugged him if he had said, confirm Lisa Cook to be part of the Fed. This is a Black woman, the first time a Black woman has been nominated to the Federal Reserve. How come he couldn't call her? How come he couldn't say that? Biden kind of, he shilly-shallies. And the shilly-shallying disappoints us. But even as it disappoints us, here's what we know. You can write me down with history with your bitter, silly lies and still lie.
Thank you.
So therein lies the story. So this week, the biggest news was State of the Union and Ukraine. I think that Ukraine president handled very well. I think the second news came from today regarding the unemployment rate. And again, I think that we've seen progress, but it's still challenging. I think that we also have to look at what's happening. I know I'm running out of time, Lyndia, so let me just say what's going on in the states we have to be concerned about. In Georgia, where they're trying to make it more difficult for people to vote. In Florida, where the stupid governor chided young people, told them to take their masks off. Excuse me, what kind of glue have you been sniffing? I mean, really, in Texas, snatching transgender children from their parents because they think being transgendered is child abuse. What we have, we're seeing a country at war. We're not looking at, I'm not saying that about Ukraine. I'm saying about this United States where people have been really resistant to reality. And I'll stop there.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds like a winner, Dr. Julianne. I am so glad that you got back today. I'm glad you're feeling better. You sound like you're feeling great.
Honey, feeling pretty good, y'all.
Wonderful. All right. Well, you've been listening to Dr. John Malvo here on the Lyndia Grant Show, and we're so glad she was able to come back and be with us again, and we'll have her back on again next week. Thank you so much for coming on back again this week, Dr. J.
Always a pleasure. My sister Lyndia. We'll see you next week.
Right. Bye. All right. Okay, bye. All right. Well, I wanted to tell you a little bit before we go to commercial break who our guests are. I understand I have two of them on. We're trying to see if we can get a number for the third guest, but I do have Mr. Rodney Foxworth and Frank Wiles on the line, and we're going to be talking about renaming the Lamont Briggs Library after we come back from commercial breaks. How are you today, Rodney?
Oh, you call.
All right. Good to hear your voice. How about Frank? Frank, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful, Frank.
Waiting on you.
All right. Well, wonderful. We're going to go to commercial break, and we're going to come. Is Stanley not there yet, is he?
No.
We're going to go to commercial break. She said the number wasn't working, so I'm waiting to see if I can get a new number.
I gave her the new number.
Okay, good. Well, then he'll probably be on by the time we come back from commercial break. You're listening to the Lyndia Grant Show. We're going to go to our commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about renaming the Lamont Briggs Library in memory of Mrs. Lillian J. Huff, with the co-chairs and one of her dear friends. Rodney Foxworth and Frank Weil are co-chairing the committee, and Stanley Mays Esquire is going to be on with us. He's one of her dear friends, and we're going to talk about that after we come back. Back in a moment.
If it wasn't for my care coach at AmeriHealth, I probably wouldn't be so healthy right now. As a man, we don't get checkups or see a doctor regularly anyways. It's probably just a man thing because none of my partners go either. We know we should, but we just don't, and hope it works out.
So what changed for you?
AmeriHealth assigned me a care coach, somebody that gives one-on-one help, answer questions, explain things, and help set my appointments. She also helped me understand what having high blood pressure really means and ways to manage it so it doesn't kill me. It ain't nothing to play with. If you're a member of AmeriHealth, ask for a care coach. I'm glad I got mine.
At AmeriHealth, if you need a care coach, you can have one. Just call us at 1-877-759-6224 to get connected. 1-877-759-6224. This program is funded in part by the government of the District of Columbia Department of Healthcare Finance. Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Washington Informer religion columnist Lyndia Grant.
Ida B. Wells, born into enslavement, was a journalist and activist. An avid reader, she read through the entire Bible many times. Wells was once asked to leave the ladies' car and sit in the colored train. She refused and train officials pushed her. Ida B. Wells retaliated but was pushed off the train at the next stop. A crowd of whites applauded. She vowed to get even. 3 of her close friends were lynched for opening businesses that cut into profits of whites. Everything changed for Wells. She spoke out internationally against lynching of blacks for the rest of her life. Through her efforts, lynching in America nearly disappeared by the time of her death. An NAACP founder, we salute Ida B. Wells for Women's History Month.
Read more in the religion column of the Washington Informer, an award-winning African-American newspaper. We don't report crime or gossip, just positive news. Pick up the Washington Informer or visit us online at WashingtonInformer.com. Call 202-561-4100 for more information.
This is Frank Smith with the African American Civil War Museum in Washington, D.C., located at 1925 Vermont Avenue Northwest on the Green Line. Did you know that a recent study found that children who visit museums do better in school and in life than children who do not? So parents, teachers, and preachers, let's get moving. I promise you, if you bring your children to the African American Civil War Museum, they will be inspired by the images that they see. They will be impressed by our living history reenactors who are always available, and they will be involved in our scavenger hunt that takes them throughout our exhibit. That's the African American Civil War Museum, 1925 Vermont Avenue. Our hours are 10 to 6:30 on weekdays, 12 to 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. See it. Be inspired.
All right, we are back, and I think we now have everyone. I have Stanley Mays over here with me, you guys, so it's okay. How are you today, Stanley?
We're great. Thank you for having us.
All right, so we have Frank Wiles and Rodney Foxworth on the other call, and have you here with me. So thank goodness we got everybody together. Today we are talking about renaming the Lamont Riggs Library, and I'm not going to use up much of the time. I'm just going to go straight to Rodney and Frank and ask, who is the committee to rename the new Lamont Riggs Library, and what is our request to the D.C. Public Library? Rodney and then Frank.
That's a great question. So I'm Rodney Foxworth. I'm the Ward 4 co-chair, and I coordinate the committee to rename the new Lamont Riggs Library.
Yes, and I'm Frank Wiles, co-chair, Ward 5, former ANC commissioner. The library opened in 1983. We are requesting that D.C. Public Library rename the Lamont Riggs Library in the name of the late Lillian J. Huff, Lamont Riggs Library, after the Miss Lillian Huff.
And this is Rodney to answer the other part of your question, Lydia. The committee is composed of about 20 residents of Wards 5, Wards 4, and from other parts of the city. We are current former community leaders, former elected officials, and others who are very aware of Mrs. Huff's efforts to get the original library built and to secure funds for the new library that's being constructed now.
Okay, let me go to Stanley May. Stanley,
Yes.
In your own words, who is Mrs. Huff? Just tell us that.
Mrs. Huff was a force of nature. She was someone who spent her time doing a number of things, and I'll hit them really quick. She spent her time nurturing the next generations of people to come to be in the leadership of this city, to help this city continue to grow civically and socially. And so a library is a perfect place for to commemorate the work that she did throughout the city.
Okay. Frank Wiles, let's talk about her work in the city that you know of.
Well,
just briefly, because I knew Mrs. Huff well too, and we can't even tell it all in this
right.
12 minutes.
And I'll make it short.
Highlight.
Okay, we live here in Ward 5, Lamont Riggs, the Civic Association, the highest voting precinct in the city at one time. And I met Ms. Huff back in 1972, and we worked on different campaigns. We worked in our community. She fought the Green Line. She fought I-95, and she was very active in the political part of the city, not only in Ward 5, but throughout the city. And Ms. Huff and I have always worked the polls together at Precinct 66. And regardless of who we support, our friendship maintained. And, I mean, it's a good person to have on your team.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I know that because I wouldn't be on Radio 1 if it hadn't been for Mrs. Lyndia J. Huff. Because I want to just get this in, how I took her over to the home of the late Barbarette Simmons, who was hosting the radio show, but her husband had died, and I'm going to keep this short. And while I was there, Miss Huff asked her, well, what you going to do about your radio show? Because she was getting ready for the funeral and people were coming. And I had been trying to get on the radio, and I volunteered and said, I'd like to do it. I raised my hand, and that's how I got my foot in the door.
Wow.
And I ended up hosting for about a few months until she was ready to come back. And then when she had a stroke, I hosted for a whole year. All because I took Mrs. Lillian J. Huff over to her house when her husband died. So now let's keep going. I wanted to get that in for myself.
Okay, sure.
I want to talk about some of the remarkable support and overwhelming majority groups that have. Tell us a little bit about that, Rodney. Some of the groups that have supported her.
We have just enjoyed tremendous support from the Lamont Riggs community. We've got letters of support from the overwhelming majority of groups, organizations, civic groups, not only in Lamont Riggs, but adjacent to the Lamont Riggs community as well. And that includes North Michigan Parks, Queens Chapel, the South Manor Park Civic Association. We've also got support from other groups, organizations, and individuals from across the city. I want to say about 2 weeks ago, we sent the D.C. Public Library 25 letters of support from all those civic associations. That included 2 congresswomen that were friends of Mrs. Huff and knew about her work on the library, ANC 5A, where the commission is located, and the library is located in that area, and other groups and individuals from across the city as well. I want to add just 2 other things that I think are really important. We've got support from both of our council members. The Lamont Riggs community is one of the few neighborhoods that are split between 2 wards. So we have support from Ward 4 council member Janice Lewis George and Ward 5 council member Kenyon McDuffie, and the library is actually located in Ward 5. Last thing I wanted to say is that we're so pleased that in working with Councilmember McDuffie, he recently introduced a council resolution to the D.C. Council asking the D.C. Public Library to rename the new library the Lillian J. Huff Lamont Riggs Library.
Mm-hmm. That sounds exciting, I'm telling you. And so I just wanted to give you all a chance to give some closing comments. Stanley, you have something else you want to add?
Yes, I would just add, and I can't stress this enough. Ms. Huff's undying devotion to making the future the youth of this city and rise to be in the leadership of the city. I can't stress enough how important it was for her that women be in leadership roles. She was a supporter of Sharon Pratt Kelly, and helped her achieve her mayorship here, and she continued to mentor people in order that they continue to rise in the city, and she was just a jewel, and she made me. I would like to think that her forward thinking was so good that she had me as an Uber driver before Uber was invented, because she had me taken to the airport so many times that I didn't we missed the opportunity to have a business.
Yes, indeed. Well, that's just you heard me tell my story. I was taking her over to visit Barbara Lett Simmons. That was her good friend.
Right.
And then after Barbara liked how I did so much, she tells me that Barbara said all the people were in town for the funeral, and they pulled up around the radio, one of those big old-fashioned radios, and listened. And that was my first time on the radio, y'all. But I gave a tribute to Lizzie's husband, and I did the best I could, and she said I did a great job. And I was so blessed and thankful. And then she started using me as her
Uber driver.
Her substitute.
No, it was Uber.
Every time she wanted to take off, she would call me. And then when she went in the hospital with her stroke, she called, and her son called, rather, and told me that my mother wanted you to take over her show while she's in the hospital. Had a bad stroke, and it lasted a whole year, you all. Now, you know I wasn't going to have to get back on the radio after doing that, wasn't I? A whole year, every Saturday I'm running over there to Princess Garden Parkway. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew how close I was with Mrs. Lillian J. Huff. So Rodney,
that lady opened. She opened doors for a lot of people, and if she perceived you to be a young and upcoming person, she was in your corner and would push you as far as she could make you go.
That's right.
Hey, Ms. Grant, I know we're about out of time. Can I get like 1 minute?
Yeah, Frank, I want you to know you can take a couple of minutes. It's only 6:21.
Great. So just want to let your listeners know that the D.C. Public Library renamed the Shepherd Park Branch Library after Mrs. Juanita Thornton. She was a retired teacher who led the effort to get that library built. That space was slated to the location, that land was going to be a fast food restaurant, but she realized there were no libraries in or near Shepherd Park, and they came up with a slogan that said "Books, not burgers," as a way to get that land dedicated to the library. So when the D.C. Public Library renamed that library, they said, and I quote, "It was doing so to honor the woman principally responsible for the library's completion." We believe that also describes Mrs. Huff, and that's why we're asking the D.C. Public Library to rename the new Lamont Riggs Library the Lillian J. Huff Lamont Riggs Library. She advocated with Congress before there was home room in the district to get the money to actually build the initial library. It took her over 20 years. And when that library was built in 83, Mrs. Huff didn't stop. She worked another 15 years to work with the new D.C. government, the mayor, and the council to get them to set aside capital improvement funds to rebuild the library. And she did that about 25 years ago. That's amazing. That's amazing.
All right, Frank, give us your closing comment.
Well, my closing comment is like, you could stop by Lillian Huff, especially in the community, and sit on the front porch with her and talk about the issues. And she was so well versed on the issues in our community. The neighbors would come by and ask her, "Who should I vote for? What should I do?" And she was always a leader. She took that role, and she enjoyed doing that, improving our community. And like I said, we had number of battles at Precinct 66, but we maintained our friendship over the years. And I enjoy, everybody talking about Uber. If Lynn was at the meeting and she needed a ride, she would get a ride with me, and then she would say, "Oh, let's go by this fast food place, and I'm gonna buy you dinner." But I mean, it is worthy to our community to name that library after Miss Huff.
Hey, Lyndia, if your listeners want to know more information, can I get you 2 numbers real quick?
Sure, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
They can contact me at 202-997-1875. That's 202-997-1875. And if they think that Mrs. Huff is worthy of having that library named after her, and I hope that they do, because the facts are pretty clear, they should also call D.C. Public Library at 202-727-1101. That's 202-727-1101, and let them know that they think that that library should be named after Mrs. Huff.
Does either one of you all have anything else you want to add before we close this interview?
Go ahead, Ron.
The only thing I would add is that when you look at the history of the D.C. Public Library naming community branches, they've named 5 of them already, and they are all named after local activists and folks who had played a significant role in actually getting that library built. And I know there was some talk about naming it after the architect, Bryant and Bryant, but there really isn't any evidence that the D.C. Public Library has ever named a community library after the architect who built the facility. So I think that they have a great track record in naming community public libraries after the individuals who was most responsible for getting the library built, and that is absolutely Mrs. Huff.
Okay. Stanley?
I would not add anything to what has been said. I would say it is just appropriate. It's just a good thing that someone's work in this city is commemorated for young people to see what this city is capable of producing.
All right. Well, I thank you all, the committee, to rename the Lamont Riggs Library in Ward 5, Washington, D.C., off of South Dakota Avenue. And we hope that you all will support if you haven't already. And I thank this committee for being my guest today.
Thank you for giving us a chance to share this with you and your listeners, Ms. Grant.
All right. Well, we're about to close now. You're listening to the Lyndia Grant Show. I thank you for tuning in. Next Friday, we're going to have another special guest on. She is the sister of Dr. Maya Rockymore Cummings. Her name is Dr. Meredith Rockymore Brooks. She is a doctor out of Texas, and she's going to be talking to us about women's health and how to take care of yourself. I'd like to give you a special invite to join me at my church this Sunday. We're returning back to live in-person worship at the All Nations Baptist Church, where our pastor is the Reverend Dr. James Coleman, Northeast Washington, D.C., right there at the corner of North Capitol and Rhode Island Avenue. All right, that does it for our show. I hope you enjoyed listening to Dr. Julianne Malvo. Glad she's back. And to the committee. Words, thoughts, and deeds have a boomerang effect, so be careful what you send out. Scripture says, my people perish for the lack of knowledge. So think on these things. From the Lyndia Grant Show, I'm your host, Lyndia Grant. Until next week, remember Philippians 4:6 says, think on these things. Good day.
Thank you for listening to the Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with your host, Lyndia Grant.